Our first guest is the head coach of the Minnesota State Mankato NCAA Hockey Club. It is Luke Strand, former Flames assistant of the Abbotsford Heat. Luke, thanks for joining us. Great to see you. How are you, buddy?
I love it. It's all is well here. Things are getting rolling. It's just good to have the guys back. See the whites of their eyes is always a special time.
Yeah, fair enough. Another year coming. This show, we're going to be chatting with Fred Harbinson from the Penticton V's, who obviously had a long time in Junior A, college prior to that at St. Cloud, and now off to the WHL with their expansion into Penticton. And also we'll chat with Bert Gilling, who's going to join us from the Mount Royal Cougars to just sort of figure out what's changed with the eligibility rules. First off, though, tell us about your program, tell us about the team, and how long you've been there as the skipper behind the bench.
Yeah, it's good. It's year 3 here. I had won a title in USHL in 22. Then we went to Ohio State as assistant coach. We lost out in the NCAA tournament there. Opportunity became about here, and the fit was right back in the footprint of my life. So Mankato is south of Minneapolis by about an hour. Okay. Perfect little town, college town, 15,000 students, sold out barn. A great setup for a young man to develop, not only as a player, but as a person, and everything under one roof. It's a one-stop shop. It's about as pro as you can get day to day around here with development-wise. And I think big picture for us, taking a huge pride in making people's careers last longer. So if we can get them to the American League so they can stretch in the NHL, great. If they can go directly to the NHL, wonderful. If they got to go to Europe for a first stop, that's a good stop too.
Okay, so I got a couple of Flames-related questions for at the end, but let's start with the last 12 months. I don't know when exactly the whispers started about eligibility rules, but I suppose, the portal was a new thing, and NIL, I guess money or rights for players was a big thing. And I think that probably led us to the path where it's like, well, hey, why? Because a kid makes a couple $100 a month playing junior hockey in Canada, can you not play NCAA? You would have seen decades of the old version, and we're very, very early into a new set of rules that I think of a lot of people asking questions, hence the show today. So what was the last year like, and did you get a sense that this was inevitable, or was it always going to be like, we'll see?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a fire hose. The idea that, especially here, I'll use us as an example. Like, you take over a program, you're trying to get ahead in recruiting, because when the old crew, when they moved on, you had some cupboards to fill. So we got ahead of that. And then the dynamic changes where the CHL kids become eligible. The portal becomes a larger opportunity for players to leave. Not only if a coach left, you could jump in the portal, meaning you could switch schools without penalty. Now you can switch schools without penalty with or without a coach leaving, just out of happiness or situation, whatever that may be for a young man and a family and an agent. So that part has come across the board for us. It definitely changes the dynamic. You can probably, I would consider, reload a little bit quicker, maybe through the portal. A lot of times there's players leaving places for opportunity that maybe they didn't get somewhere else. And then I think you've got to be really good in decision making that is still going to be the right fit when they come here. Just because it didn't work somewhere else doesn't mean it wouldn't fit here, or vice versa. Someone coming in or out. So you got to do your homework. I think there's a really good track and trend of a kid. You probably saw some trends through their junior career into early college. Does that make sense for your lineup at your timing? Can you balance some classes maybe with the portal? Mm-hmm. But then the CHL is a whole different animal, because now you opened up a pool of players that never existed before, that had chosen a path of non-college that are now eligible to go to college, plus or minus some stipulations.
Right. Okay. So when was it like, okay, this is happening, we got to get as many eyeballs as we can up into Canada, or maybe even you as the head coach be like, I got to get my butt up to Canada to start looking at some of these kids. And I suppose even like Pacific Northwest, and there's some OHL teams that are in the States as well. But like all of a sudden this huge player pool that, you might have some intel on, but you're not recruiting, all of a sudden, like, this is going to become available.
Yeah. I think you start to, it was probably last fall we dug into making sure, this spring prior. So the spring of 4 would have been a kind of heads up this could be happening. So you dug in, you did homework, you saw some players, you saw some who was in maybe in that pool of players who would be coming out at this time as overagers? Because I think at first the thought was like, okay, these guys will stay. They'll play through their 20 or 19 minimally, and then they'll leave. And then now it's turned into guys are jumping out earlier than that
Sure.
coming to college. And I don't know. It's a path for everyone to choose. You can do scouting is one thing. Evaluating talent, that's a whole business in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that the right guy for the right reason at the right time, that's the actual business, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely fair. And look, we've seen some really high profile cases, Caden Lidstrom and Gavin McKenna, Reshny, Verhoff. These are all like guys that have or are expected to be high profile first rounders. Some with some Flames ties, a lot with Alberta ties. And those are high profile, but in the instance of all those guys, you've got to want to go be a college student. It isn't just like, hey, I'm going to play hockey. It's like, well, okay, well, have we done SATs? Are your grades there? That I think that's a piece some people forget. There are still going to be elite 18, 19s in the CHL that college isn't for them, I suppose. So just to go scout a good player doesn't mean that's going to be a college player.
All day. A big part of it was, I think the older the player right now in the CHL, the less probably NCAA minded they were, because they got in for a reason. The NCAA was never an option.
Mm-hmm.
I think that will shift now. I think there's going to be some kids that keep a pretty good NCAA priority in their life as far as academics goes to make sure eligibility is of their opportunity. Even if you didn't want to go, it'd be crazy not to keep NCAA opportunity just as leverage along the way, I guess, would be an easy sight. And then I think doesn't matter if it's here, other places in the NCAA, like the numbers have shown, the time has shown, the percentage of players playing in the NHL that have come through college doors is risen, and it's risen pretty rapidly on the idea of time, and time's on your side. Scheduling is probably on your side as far as training, development. I'd be the first one to say, I'm usually am the first one to say, I wish we played more games, but we don't. But what it does give you is more time as a human to be ready when they want to make that jump. And I do think for some of the young guys, if they've mastered maybe a level, CHL included, but then now you got to go face off against a 22, 23, 24-year-old, that's a different game. And if you're not, if you're not getting using up, and now if I'm a club in the NHL and I want to go place a player with us, why wouldn't you believe in the development path of what's here without having to pay that athlete, make that kind of on our burden, and then they take the fruits of the labor at some point.
Yeah, sure. Do you see the college game getting less 3-4 year program view versus like with the portal and with now major junior players being eligible, that it's maybe 1 and 2 year windows that you can't really go beyond because there's so much player movement? Like I think traditionally when, most of your life you'd recruit a kid and you'd probably have him 4 or 5 years. Maybe he needs an extra year junior. Maybe he can play a 5th year. There's gonna be a lot of kids that play at a program for 1 or 2 years. And that used to be the outlier with the likes of Jonathan Toews.
It was. I mean, and the guys that did were the guys that turned pro. They weren't leaving school to school or maybe tearing it up here and someone had a bigger paycheck to pay them somewhere else. That didn't exist. Now it does exist. I think there's probably, if you rewound that conversation, be like, okay, what got me there? What believed in me to be at this point in my life that I did develop, that I did take off, that now all of a sudden someone can come in and buy? I think that's going to come down to the people. I think you'll probably see less 4-year players. It's on a program, in my opinion, to probably find some balance, the balance that lies between, how many 1-year guys am I going to have, 2-year guys, 3-year guys, and can you get a 4th? And now guys are, especially in the States, probably accelerated in school along the way a little bit. Mm-hmm. That COVID opportunity to be an online student really, I think, sprungboard some kids to get ahead. So there's a lot of kids that are graduating in 3 years. They're, in our case here, our guys come here, they train in the summer, they take summer course. Because they take summer course, they're able to get a scholarship in the summertime. Well, all of a sudden now our job for me is to make them graduate and be a pro. So if we can get them inches closer to graduation, at the same time, miles ahead development-wise to become a pro, you're kind of tying two knots at one time.
What are you seeing as the potential fallout? Because I think it's easy for people to guess, but just your experiences with it. I mean, I've talked to a bunch of different people in different sort of facets of player development and that sort of junior to collegiate age level. And is it harder to get a commitment? Are you worried about someone reneging? Clearly players have a lot of options. That means agents have a lot of options and leverage. Like, are you weary of that a little, or is it just go back to that homework where you make sure this is the right person? And, if that's the case, you're less likely to see them say, well, actually I got this offer in this league for whatever.
I think you're seeing it happen daily. I mean, personal experiences here. We've had schools come in and take players that are going to enter here as freshmen. They offer them a bigger payday than probably what we can do. Maybe that's money to a family that's really important, which is that's who am I to say? How am I to control that part?
Yeah.
I'd go toe to toe with the idea like what they would get here day to day. That'd be a different story. But if you're talking like some wealth gain, that how do you argue? I think in some regard. But then on the other side, like, you're seeing now guys. You see the young man that's going to Michigan that just left late in Kitchener. I do think we'll find some players maybe that came down from the CHL this year because of just maybe the in-between time, that maybe find out the school wasn't cut out for them, even though they could do it. It's just like, that wasn't my plan. That's not the direction I was going. So we probably were a little more passive and just observation-wise, we want to make sure we're seeing what we saw and believed in what we believed in before we jumped in with both feet. Yeah. Now we have other recruits that have left spots that are now going to go play in the CHL, and good for them. We're excited about that opportunity for them to come back here.
Yeah, and I do wonder what the USHL's role in all this. We'll talk with a U Sports coach, and they're having to deal with they used to get anyone that wanted to go to college and played major, that's your pool. Well, that's changed all of a sudden. But the USHL is the flip side of that, where if you wanted to go to NCAA, that was an incredible option for American players. And now the CHL is like, yeah, you can still go to college. Come on up. Like, Do you have any sort of, I don't want to say like bold proclamations, but like fears or thoughts or wonders about who the winners and losers are going to be in all this?
Yeah, I may be too early to say like a definitive moment of that, but I worked in the USHL for a very long time and did tons of pro where a lot of CHL kids came in. I don't know. I think it's a personal, like what's going to fit, what hat is going to fit them. I don't know if it's a one-stop shop. I don't believe that somebody, just because Joey did, is going to work perfect for Jimmy and vice versa, that direction. I do think there's probably going to be some adjustment period for both. Like you used to walk into, if you ever went to, as a college guy, you went to a CHL game, you wore zero possible logo with a hat pulled down to your nose because you didn't really want someone to know that is, and now I think the biggest threat is, are you going to take them before they're draft eligible? Are you going to take them before their 19-year-old year? That's probably the alarming heads up on their side, would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, and there's finances at play on both sides. So for the teams in major junior, if your players select in the first round, there's significant remuneration. Yep. Like they get some cash for that. And so if they're starting to lose guys in draft year, it's like, oof, all of a sudden you can be the big bad wolf. And then the flip side is, as you alluded to, this NIL money in the portal. Now other schools can poach guys that normally they'd have to sit out to get a year eligibility back or whatever. Explain the NIL money thing to us, because it's totally foreign to Canadians. Like how does it work? Who has it? How much can they allocate? And what are the sort of numbers that you're hearing for, elite hockey players that can sort of pick and choose a bit?
Well, I mean, you hear big numbers out of Penn State and some McKenna numbers that are large. If you opted into the house settlement, meaning you're going to go through the rules and regulations the NCAA is setting up for roster limitation and revenue sharing, your revenue of your athletic department, I believe, is just over $20 million. However, that gets split up to whatever sports are big on your campus. Like it could be larger for a school that's got a bigger football program. It might be better for a hockey school that's maybe a little more prominent than football. Maybe it's heavy basketball in that regard too. So that revenue share, it allows direct payment for the athlete from the school above and beyond. So to your point earlier, where a CHL kid was deemed ineligible, even though they made a couple $100 a month, that's gone out of the fact of now they can get that direct payment from the school. And now on the NIL side, there's something called NIL Go, which is a new mechanism where there was really no fair market value. You could say like, Pins, you're going to get $100,000 to go sign autographs this afternoon. And there was no one that could really put a gate down on it. Now they're trying to, I think, put a little bit of rails on what is appetite for marketing, what is appetite for a signing bonus, what would be an appetite for a car deal. Like they're trying to put some rails on what's out there. And I from what I know and from others, it's a little bit blind experience because it's what someone might get okayed for, someone might not get okayed for as well.
Elsewhere, yeah, interesting. Okay, I want to get to a couple of Flames questions in here, but a few more just on the eligibility change. I think when you look at the options available, you could certainly argue that the players are big winners, and I guess by virtue of being related to them, the agents and or family representatives are big winners here in the sense that you can be paid in your teens quite politely in theory to play hockey, where that before that just wasn't really on the table unless you're Austin Matthews, go to Switzerland when you have a late birthday and there's a million things that coincidentally fall right. Do you worry at all about, we're already talking about a new generation of athletes, and I know you sort of have a little more of an old school bend to the way you want to play the game and the characters that you really, enjoy watching play the game. If the littlest thing goes wrong, are you sort of worried that this is a slippery slope and now that you're just like, we're going to the portal, I'm taking them back to major? Like you do want to see your athletes have to struggle through things and persevere rather than just throw their hands up and say, I'm out of here, right?
I do. I think I don't like the fact that the eject button is right next to them. At least there was a mechanism in place. Like if you really wanted to leave, you had to sit. That was how the old rule was. If I wanted to go from Minnesota State to Duluth, sure, I could do that, but I had to sit a year in the interim. Mm-hmm. Maybe some things of that nature where you get one free portal to go, and if you shift another school, you get a penalty.
Okay,
that could happen. I don't know where that's all at, but there is probably some concern. I mean, contractually, if a pro player decides like, what am I going to do? Knock on your door and say, Connie, I'm not going to come to work today because I want to get a trade. Well, there's some holdback, right? I mean, there's a little bit of there's a mechanism in place to take care of that. We don't have that, and I don't think it helps the athlete. I don't think it helps the mental fortitude that it takes to become a real long time pro. If your easiest thing is to hit see you later.
Yeah. Fair. I want to touch on a couple Flames while we got you. I remember when Marty Pospisil started making waves in the organization, and you're like, I love this kid. And, I'm trying to think, I don't want to, date you in terms of, you've coached a lot and seen a lot of kids, but you probably had that player coach relationship with hundreds, if not close to 1,000 players. And it sounds like Marty still cracks the top 5 fingers if you had to name them. What about Pospisil makes you smile?
Everything for me. I loved, when he came over to the States from home, I was the first story landed on, and I just thought the timing of his life to grow up and see and be away from home for the first time. I think just to have some adversity in his life in the hockey world. He had gone from home to Red Bull to us. Like it was a little bit of a journey in the middle, but just the growth. I think the way he treated adults, the way he was, I don't know. I always call him like dumb as a fox. Like he knew everything that was going on and acted like he knew nothing was going on, but he knew everything that was going to happen. I enjoyed that he wanted to get better. I loved the day that, you get inside the boards. There was a Martin Pospisil that wasn't like the guy that was in the street or the crowd with the kid that was helping him tie his shoes. That was a really cool point. I remember going through that with, at the time Jimmy Cummins would be around because he had the U.S. in the building. And I don't know how you could miss with a kid that was that determined daily to get better. And that had a chip on his shoulder because he wanted it really bad.
He's kind of a master of the dark arts too. I know you prefer those to not having them.
Yeah, we had some good moments. It would be like, not now, Pos, and then it was too late. I'm like, oh, that happened already. So there was a moment there where being suspended was like a pretty routine battle for him to get through.
Yeah, fair enough. Injuries have been a big thing too there. It feels like when he's available, you love him, but when you factor in suspensions and injuries, it's like, God, he's got to walk a fine line because the way he plays, guys are going to want to fight him. And the way he plays, he's going to probably have to talk to George Peros every other year. That does feel like the secret sauce if you could figure that out, hey?
It is. And it's maturity. I mean, you can see for me, I know we were going back and forth a little bit on Poss. Like, I think there's part of him that didn't want to lose a spot in the lineup. So I think maybe, man, I can't be suspended because someone else might come in and take my job. And now I think he's getting a little more footing that way where the old Marty might come back. The Marty party could happen for you guys up there. It's just that edge of his, though, is, I don't know. It's an old school trait that's not always. And for me, that working in the organization, that was a flame. That was like you were a flame when you dance right on that edge, and he does that.
Yeah, fair enough. Another guy I wanted to ask you about, Sam Morton. He kind of was a unheralded spring free agent signing a couple springs ago, but looked pretty darn good. Not young, but you just basically said, I understand the odds are stacked again, but I'm just not betting against this guy.
I would bet on Morty every day. I think kind of back to Poss, like he's a very determined kid. I think they're way different animals as far as maybe IQ and slyness and age and maturity about their game. Like Morty plays an older game already as a young player in the league and things, but he's just an absorbing information guy that can go apply it. And that's not every day for a lot of players can take things in, but they can't go make it go to work for himself. And same thing, you hope that he's durable enough because he's got enough edge on the end of his blade to his shoulders that are, it's an important part of his game, but he can't get stuck playing that way all the time.
Yeah. And you would have had him, 1 year, your first in Mankato?
Yeah. My first year here, he was our captain. There was a moment there maybe where when he stuck when Mike Hastings left and went to Wisconsin, Morty stayed. And for me, I'm forever grateful for that move of his. What a class, mature side. But he'd gone through an injury, and that from where he was at that moment, he wasn't even a factor to be a pro at the end of that year. That's how far behind he was out of injury.
Really? His
self-determination for rehab and come back through. And he was player of the year in our league and signed with the Flames at the end of the year. And now, got a crack at it. I hope he can get his foot in the door and be healthy at the right time because there's been some unavailable times for him too.
Yeah, fair. And he plays center. That's going to help. He's
a center on both sides of the puck too. Both ends of the rink, both sides of the puck. I think he can play with good players. I think he can shut down good players. But there's enough transition in his game where he doesn't spend a lot of time in his end, and he knows how to play the game the right way.
Yeah, fair enough. Appreciate your time. How's the squad looking this year? You sent me some team building activities. So that means we're close. We're
getting close. The whites of their eyes are there, and we like our group. Last year we lost out in the NCAA tournament to Western in double overtime. We went on and won the whole thing, and we want to be back in that seat again with a different outcome.
Yeah. Well, best of luck this year. Always appreciate your insights. And I know for those closer to the Flames organization that saw you in the minors and then doing some scouting for the club, a big hello from everyone in Calgary, and hope to see you up here recruiting soon.
Yeah, meaningful time. That was a great chapter of my life with the Flames.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Vince.
Hey, buddies. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Also, if you could throw in a like and subscribe, it does help us out with what it is we are doing. And check out more at flamesnation.ca.